Welcome back for another episode of Sunday Soul Day. Today we have Jenny Reyes, the founder of Your Brand Story, where she helps entrepreneurs and leaders build growth-driven, authentic brands. With over 20 years of marketing experience, a certified working genius facilitator and disc consultant, her unique approach combines marketing strategy with leadership tools to empower entrepreneurs and their teams to overcome overwhelm and create alignment while building lasting and meaningful brands. Let's welcome her to the show. Welcome to Sunday Soul Day, Jenny.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I could not wait for our conversation. I loved how we connected. Shout out to David, who is another soul fueler on Sunday Soul Day. What's up, David? We are so glad to be connected. And I just love your background and would just love to give the audience a little bit of your journey. Like,
Okay.
one thing I'm always so curious about is, you work a traditional job, you've done that before. Like, what made you transition out of that and then bet on yourself and start building your own businesses?
Yeah, that's it's interesting because that takes me back like decades. But it really was because I got married, and that wasn't something that I had planned to do. I mean, but well, the marriage was a plan,
Yeah.
but the jumping out and starting on my own wasn't really. It was more of I was working in a fast moving consumer industry, and you might have heard of this small company called Unilever, and I was handling a small brand called Dove.
Yep, teeny tiny companies. Yeah.
Yeah, and doing brand management there. And the first thing was I noticed I was working 18-hour days. And it was funny because the joke between my new husband at the time and I was he was sleeping too much because every time I would see him, he's asleep, or I was working too much because I would come home, he was asleep, and then I would leave in the morning and he's still asleep. So it wasn't the best way to start our marriage, and that was kind of the first catapult to we've got to do something different. And then the next thing, of course, was being in the field that I was in. I just noticed some gaps and some opportunities to how things could be, and I think that's really how many of us kind of get started. There's a little frustration, there's a little discontent to say like, oh, if only we could do this better and do it for ourselves. And so that's kind of where I got started, where it was like, I think there's a person, a general contractor, somebody that's in the middle that can say, this is what the vision is, this is what the brand needs, and how do you bring it to life that people can understand. And I mean, I say that now, but 20 years ago, it was just more of there's something missing. And I kind of have to just figure this out. And that's the short version of how I did and got into what I was doing. So there you go.
No, I love that though, because it's like you saw challenges and you were
Yeah.
like, this needs to be solved and let me go out and solve it. And I think a lot of the best entrepreneurs
Yeah.
start there. They start with the problem as opposed to jumping right into a business. And so I love that you share that. That's such a gem for everyone. It's like start with the problem and then go solve that. And so tell me, because your marketing and branding journey is just inspiring. You've worked for just really incredible companies, and then now you've built your company, your brand story. Tell us a little bit about that, like in how you decided to even go about building that company.
Yeah, yeah. So it didn't come easy at the
Yeah.
beginning. It was sort of like I just got married. I've come from a stable job. I mean, at one point I even thought, well, what if I did some wedding planning? And everybody that knew me looked at me like, what? What are you gonna do? Like maybe I can plan weddings. That was kind of the idea. But, and just kind of knowing and understanding, I guess it did light me up. And I say again, I say all these words because now I know, right? Back then it was more of, yeah, maybe I'll do wedding planning, and then and with everybody's like, so, you know how a dog tilts its head and goes, eh? That was kind of the face I was getting. But then a friend of mine, she was also, she was in Johnson and Johnson. I was in Unilever, and at that time was experiencing similar things. And she was like, "Well, what if we just combine forces and build this company and act as a brand manager for people who don't understand branding but know they need it?" And so that's kind of how we started. And then it was really just talking to people that we knew that was like, hey, here's an idea. What do you think? Maybe I can help you. That was literally how I started. Um, and it's funny that I say that now because I've had a client most recently, and we've had this retainer contract for probably over 5 years now. That's exactly how we started. I saw her business, and she goes, I said to her, I know I can help you. I'm not quite sure how, but I know I can help you. And she was like, I think you can help me. I don't know what you do, but I think you can help me. And that's kind of how we're like, okay, let's figure this out. And that's kind of how it's been in a very honest and rough sense. But having then built that experience with different clients, the trial and error, the conversations, just being able to communicate clearly, to be able to say, oh, okay, now I have a process and a framework. And that was something that was built over time. And then just the understanding of, well, feeling into it, well, what might work for you, or what might this be? And really it's communicating with the business owner or the client in my case to understand, does this feel right to you? Does this resonate with you? And some it will and some it won't, and then it's finding that, right, and having that kind of conversation. And we've done a little bit of that for you, I think, you've
Yeah,
had that
no,
experience with me. Yeah.
exactly. No, but I love that you said that it took, some trial and error
Yeah.
and really to get those kind of, systems in place and,
Yeah,
all the things that you need to really start a business. Like it takes time.
it
And
does.
and I think a lot of times like entrepreneurs, new entrepreneurs especially, they don't give it time.
Hmm.
And they're trying to rush to get to the next whatever,
Right. Right.
destination is,
Yes.
not realizing that this is like so much more of a marathon than a sprint.
Yes, yes. And that's what branding really is. I mean, you don't build a brand in a day. If you think of the brands that even that you follow, and that's always a first question, it's like, why do you choose? Like, I know for me, I've built my business over the last 2 decades on Apple. So my life is run by a Mac. I mean, thank you, Steve Jobs. But it's like now every time my daughter needs a Mac or a computer, my daughter needs a computer, somebody else needs a phone, I'm like, get a Mac, get an Apple Watch. And my husband can't, he's like, why do we need that? I'm like, I think it's just automatic. And if you think about it, that wasn't automatic 20, 30 years ago. It was that experience of, oh, it's done so well for me, I can rely on it, I've built this relationship with it, with the brand. And that's kind of what you want to carry when you're building your own brand, is how do I build that over time? Thus the analogy of the puzzle pieces. It's building a
Mhm.
brand is not just one little piece, it's putting all these pieces of the puzzle together in many different ways, and then you kind of have that whole picture. um, yeah, that was.
Oh, that's so good. It's so true. It's like I think over time, that's how you build the relationship, the trust, the recognition, but then also making sure that you deliver with quality, which is what Mac, does, or
Yes.
Apple, I should say, does all the time. Um, so I love that you mentioned that. Like, tell us because you help entrepreneurs kind of navigate this overwhelming world of marketing and I know for myself included, like even hiring marketing
Yeah.
individuals and building marketing teams, like I still struggled with like what falls under brand and what is
Yeah.
marketing. And so like, tell us how you help entrepreneurs just even understand that. And like, what do you think are some common mistakes that they make?
Well, first I talk, it's about really a conversation. So everything I do starts with a conversation. Like you and I were like, let's just talk about what it is you want to do, where you're at now, and where you want to go. And that's not um unique to me, right? Many different coach, strategists, consultants will do that. And then it's understanding, and I like to say after that I go into what are your values, right? What is it you want to be known for? Um, because the values are kind of what will drive everything else. So I always ask that, like, well, what do you value? What do you want to be known for? And then how is it expressed in what it is that you're doing? Because then let's say not integrity, but let's say fun is easier to spot. Fun for some is very comedic. Fun for some is very adventurous, right? And so then it's kind of bringing that out, because I mean, a brand is often built off of a person, right? A person starts it, and then the business grows from it. And if you look at what brings this culture or company together, it's the values. If you resonate with those values, you will stay in that business or that job. Otherwise, you find somebody else, and that's where the fit comes from. So it's kind of putting those building blocks in place, thinking through some of that, and then from where you're at, what are the steps that you can take in terms of a marketing plan? I mean, not everybody needs to start with a website. Some people will start with a program. Not everybody needs to start with social media. Some people will start with a website, or an event. And so what is it that resonates with you? Because I've seen people go, I know I need marketing. I just am not great at social media. And I'm like, well, why are you stuck with social media? That's not the only way, right? I'm very good at LinkedIn. I just can't do SEO. And well, maybe you won't need that right now. Let's start with what you're comfortable with. And that's kind of the journey we take. So every entrepreneur, every client is different. I'm technically not a video person. You'll not really see me post videos, but I can make a nice little, semi blog article. That is where my comfort is, or sharing little nuggets here and there. And it's kind of just building that trust, supposedly, right? And it's how people get to know you and like you and trust you and say, okay, well, let's talk because I think you can help me. I'm not sure how, but I think you can help me. And I'm like, well, I'm not sure how, but I think I can help you. So let's see if we can make that work.
Oh my gosh, I love what you said. And I think this is such a gem for entrepreneurs that are just starting off,
Yeah.
because a lot of times, we're getting information from so many different things, right? And we're seeing other coaches that are maybe, not on page one, but on page like 120,
Right.
and they have all of these streams and all these different, social
Yeah.
media and a blog and this and that. And so I think it's overwhelming for entrepreneurs. Like when they first start, they think they have to do everything. And it's just
Right.
such the wrong approach, and
Yes.
I'm guilty of it. Like I was like, I felt like a clogged pipe. So I was like, let me just, put my DNA all over the place, like I'm like, I want to put my footprint everywhere. And
Yeah.
so and I don't regret it. Like I learned so much in that process. So I definitely don't regret it. But I think like I could have been a lot more strategic early on, like leaning into the things that were working better than others. And, so I love that advice.
Well, and I think I mean, most of the clients that I work with are like, somebody said it just 2 hours ago when I was in a meeting, and they said, oh, my brain's going at 1,000 miles a minute. I'm like,
Yes.
you've always been that way. That's okay. And I'm not saying any of those ideas are wrong. I'm just saying, which one do you want to focus on first? Pick two, you know, like pick one or two, and then let's go, okay, how can we make this work? How does it feel if we did this and this and this? So it's not saying no to any of them, it's just saying not yet, perhaps, because your resources are limited. I mean, you and I were both moms. We both do so many different things. It's like, what is it I can do that I can take a step and make that work for us? And I believe that's why people appreciate, because I'm like, great idea, great idea, great idea. Which one do you want to start with? Like,
Yes.
we've got to start with one. And that's what kind of makes it also, I want to say, affordable, right? Because if you come to me with 10 ideas, I'm like, great, you want to do all of them? Then it's a big wide buffet, right? You don't need the buffet. Let's go down to one thing first. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. But you're also, so you work with newer entrepreneurs like myself, but you
Yeah.
also work with like, 7 and 8 figure entrepreneurs,
I
like
do.
offering really unique insights and, different, branding strategies that help them scale, right? Like what common traits of success do you see like in them, and also like some challenges that you've observed over the years of working with these
Right.
really established brands?
Yeah, well, one good common trait is the focus. It's like, well, this is
Mm.
what you want to do, right? And And actually they will, because they are a little bit bigger, like some of these corporations that I work with, they're like, we just want you to focus here, we don't need you to fix
Oh,
the whole
interesting.
thing.
Yeah.
So it can be good, but it also can be very limiting, and I think that's kind of the balance that we always play off of. And so I've one of my other clients, he's built this successful estate planning firm, and there's a lot more like communication. Usually an entrepreneur, it's like, oh, let's make the decision right here, right now, let's go. But they're looking for, okay, we've got to check in with all these other stakeholders, make sure that it fits the budget, make sure that it's this. And so the timing is a little bit longer. But also they have some set parameters that they play around with. So again, it's about navigating the relationship.
Mhm.
However, they do have like tried and tested, and what's the data, and what's the, show me it's going to work, or show me that you have the basis for this assumption, right? Because a lot of what we do, as startups is, okay, let's go, let's try that, I think that might work, and there's a lot more room to iterate, right? These bigger businesses have a lot more at stake, so to speak, and a lot more justification that's needed. And I like seeing both sides, because then you can use both sides to help one the other. It's like, okay, what are the for the smaller businesses, what are some of the, we call them key performance initiatives, or the success metrics, to say, yes, let's try it, we might not have had a basis, but what are we looking for so we know not to make that mistake again. And for these ones, it's more of, well, what can you put a good risk on now that you have all this information? How quickly can we get this done so that we can give you a response? And so there's a play between the two.
Yeah.
That helps, yeah.
Oh, I can imagine. And just even like, navigating when you're working internally at a
Yeah,
startup versus like a larger organization, there's just a lot more red tape and
right,
a lot more approvals that need to happen and steps and, kind of
right.
guardrails, if you will. Whereas
Yes.
like, smaller organizations, or in your case, working with like solopreneurs or entrepreneurs with smaller teams, like it's
Yeah,
just one decision maker. So
yeah,
I can imagine that that is definitely a challenge. But and one thing I wanted to ask you is for new entrepreneurs that are listening, or like coaches, like myself, that are building their business, like what is the best piece of advice that you've given to a client, or that you kind of hold really close to your heart, that you
yeah.
think would be really helpful for them to know as they're building their brand?
Well, and this was a lesson I had to learn as
Right.
well. It was really also trusting your intuition. I think I'm still learning it too. And um and again, it's also just been built off of the years of making those mistakes and trying different things, and just realizing, like, you know what, that initial feeling or thought that I had might have had something. And I used to always ask, up until probably 3 or 4 years ago, when I realized that was also my own curriculum, was I used to always ask, well, what do you think? Well, what do you think of this idea? What do you think of, what do you think of this project? And we would always look for those pieces of, well, yeah, I think it'll work, it's worked for somebody else, we could try it. But now, as we go through, what it is we're proposing, it's always like, well, how does that make you feel? Because then if it feels better for you, it's just easier to carry out. And I believe that while that might sound simple, it's actually a great barometer to say, yeah, I think this one's for me. I think, or I feel this one is the right way to go, and I feel like that I could make that work. And that's kind of
I
the first
love
buy-in.
that. That is gold. That's liquid gold. I love that so much because first of all, like we forget that our intuition is energy. I mean,
Yeah,
everything is energy, but it is really like your energy barometer, and it's like telling you like energetically, this
yeah.
is it, or this is a good thing. Like go, and I tell people like go with it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like even if it doesn't work out, like at least you went with it, and it
Yeah.
helps you trust yourself more over time.
Yes.
And so one thing I love that Rick Rubin says, he's like when he's working with different artists, and he's worked with, some of the greatest artists, and, even up and coming artists. And he says like to make things for yourself,
Yeah.
and I love that because we're and don't get me wrong, you're supposed you want to have like if you're running a business, you want to have your particular client, your avatar that you're working towards, but you want to first do something that you love,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that
Yep.
your intuition is telling you like, ooh, like I get that gut feeling, that energy, so I love that. That is like awesome advice.
And that's where a lot of these great brands and businesses stem from. It's
Yes.
somebody, again, we started with a problem. It was kind of a pain point for you, and like, I've got to make this better. And that's why we have the products and the services that we have today, because it came from answering that and going, you know what, I have a passion behind it. And I know I can do something with it. And then you start to think about, the creatives behind it, and it just goes. It's what will carry you through the marathon that is business building, rather than being like, I've got to make money, let's do this now. That's very like short lived, and it's a short fuse, because I mean, we all want to make money to some degree, but why not do it with meaning so that you have that fuel that'll keep you going.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's really like such a great point for entrepreneurs because you are going to hit roadblocks. I mean, it's like you wouldn't be in entrepreneurship if it didn't have
Yeah.
roadblocks. It's like it has so many roadblocks and challenges and tests, constant
Yes.
tests, testing your resilience. And I'm like, if you have that love, it's like that love will carry you, like, but if you don't, it really makes things, it's not to say that it can't be done, but it just makes things 10 times harder. So I love that.
Yeah, and I mean, to that point too, it's like understanding why it matters to you, right? And what's behind it. And so I remember being asked one time, it was like, well, I do this for my kids, or I do this for the life I want to live because I don't want to miss something that my kids are doing, right? And so I'm a mom of two. They're now teenagers. One is about to go into college in like 18 months or something. I don't know.
Oh,
Other one is in middle school, about to hit high school. Like, I feel like my days with them are numbered. And I know it's important to them and to myself to be present, to be able to watch an orchestra concert, to be able to watch a volleyball game. And if I wanted to build that lifestyle for myself, and so I'm always open to how I can still keep that and do what I love. And that kind of has become my guidepost. So I've said no to people who want me to work till like 11, 12 midnight on a regular basis, because there are some people who are happy to do that. For us, we're not a fit, because at that time I'm doing bedtime stories with teenagers, kind of thing. I'm supposed to be watching a movie with my husband.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
so it's more of the life you want to live, and to have what you do build around that. Um, and that speaks to your brand as well, like the people that you do work with, the people that you resonate with, because it's like, oh, she does it, she lives that life. I'd like to do it as well, and so maybe she can help me. And again, we're back to that. I know I can help you.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And it's so interesting. We share such a similar North Star
Yeah.
because I center, really a large part of what I do around my role as a mother,
Uh-huh.
and really living like more fully, like in all areas of my life, like making sure that I'm light, like it's lighting me up,
Yeah.
So and it's not to say that every single task that we have to do as entrepreneurs lights you up, but
Sure.
I really lean into that. I want to make sure that like, my North Star is still the North Star. And I always say like my North Star doesn't change. Now, how I get there and what I
Yes.
do to get there might, change over time. I don't know. I have no clue what the future holds, but I can
Yeah.
guarantee my North Star doesn't change. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love that. Oh, so good. Um, well, tell me this because your industry is rapidly growing and so many different things are popping up. Like, how do you see the role of traditional branding evolving in the like kind of digital age that we're in, including AI? Like we have a lot of AI happening right now. Like, what can you share?
Well, the thing about AI, I mean, the idea is, and its intention is to make things easier for us, right? I still believe it requires that human element, because if it's garbage in, garbage out, it's a basic accounting principle that I remember, right? You give it generic stuff, it's going to spew out more
Mhm.
generic stuff. It does not build your brand. So it needs that personal touch of, okay, this is the thank you.
That's
This is
so
the
good.
this
Oh,
is the this is who I am. This is what I stand for. These are the people that I want to talk to. This is the end result I want to get to. And you kind of keep feeding it that, then it can work to your advantage. And so I with another partner or collaborator, what we're trying to do as we build these brands is help even give entrepreneurs those AI generated prompts, because once you feed it something good, it will give you something better, right?
absolutely.
And then even with that, even with what you get, you always have to take a look at it again and say, you know what, maybe I tweak it this way, maybe I tweak it that way. So it makes it more you, and you just kind of have to keep doing that. So um it's not just like a one and done. I know it's we call it always like a rough draft. Like it's a great way to get a first rough draft and to give you again a set of, no, I really didn't like that, let me try something different, or yeah, that sounds good, but let me enhance it. So I still wouldn't remove the human element behind it, and it's got to be with somebody that knows and understands you and your brand, if that makes any sense. Like it doesn't have to always be you. It can be a copywriter. It can be, somebody who does the design. Because if you just tell it to spew out something blue and yellow, I mean, you can imagine the many different directions it'll take. So it's giving it that direction. That's essentially it.
That is really great. And I love that you're already incorporating AI,
Yeah.
in how you're working with clients, because I think it is really important. Like, and I really do think it's like the people who will be surviving as we as it continues to evolve, because it's so important to get comfortable with it, because it's not going anywhere anytime
Excellent.
soon. So, like it's like you want to incorporate it in your business and figure out like how it can serve you. Like I think of like everything is like, okay, even, relationships. How am I serving this relationship? How is it serving me? Like, how is AI serving me and how am I serving it? Right? Like, how am I like helping it learn me better? So like I think everything should, kind of function like that, like where it's like, is how am I able to use this, but also serve me to make things a little easier for me, and also give my client lots of options, like that's I'll use it with clients where we come up with different programs, because sometimes people need options because they like
Right.
options, and so it's kind of nice to, I'll put my option together and then I'll do like an AI option, and then I'm like, here you go. But
Yeah.
it's just really nice.
Right. And sometimes clients wonder, I mean, they say, well, if you have AI, you should be able to turn it around for me faster. Right. And that's often the stumbling block. It's like, yes, and rather than it being 2 weeks before I get back to you, I might still just need a week, because the way we use it, again, you don't remove the human element. It's you use it, you prompt it, you get it. We still dissect and discern it, right? And it's like, not quite. But to that point of how these big companies want justification and research and all those things, AI can help that with that. You feed it like, what's out there in the market, what are the trends, give me some numbers based off of this and this, and now you have more data to work with. And that's often what entrepreneurs probably need, is like, how do I get this data without having to pay a research company to run an extensive research. Some of it already exists, even as a basis, as a baseline for you to start with. So that's another tool that we kind of use to build out a strategy. And
Yeah.
then you say, like, here's what the data says, here's an assumption I'm making, and here's what we can do to test that assumption, or to run a program that actually might make sense for you. And you still need the human element for that to a certain degree, at
Mhm.
least I think.
Yeah, no, I love that because again, it goes back to, it's like you're allowing AI to serve you,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
serve a function that like, really can really operate so much faster than paying a larger organization to do that, and and even just start, the process. Like I'll use it like when I'm doing presentations and like
Uh-huh.
start like a, skeleton version of like just to get my
Ah,
wheels flowing, my thoughts flowing. Like it's incredible,
yeah,
So
yeah,
um so I love that you're incorporating it and also encouraging your clients to use it too. So
right,
yeah,
right. And if
that's
they
really
don't, we do it for them.
yeah,
So,
exactly. So tell me this, as a branding guru, I'm so curious, like who would you say has really great branding? Like which
I mean,
companies?
I always look to the bigger companies, right?
Okay.
Even if I used to use them a lot. So, of course, Apple was one that I built, my brand, my business on. Um, I'm very partial and biased to Dove, which is because that was my campaign. I was part of the team that launched Dove's campaign for Real Beauty decades ago. And I think that was a value-based thing. It was like, how do I differentiate myself from a Pond's or, another beauty brand, right? Because
Oil of
all
Olay, yeah.
or yeah,
Yeah.
because all the beauty brands were saying you've got to have perfect skin, you've got to be thin, you've got to be a size 2, and here's Dove going for as long as you take care of yourself, doesn't matter what you look like, what age you're at, what race you're from, you're beautiful, right? It redefined beauty. And so those are kind of the brands I always refer to because I built my business on it. Yeah, so that's they're good reference points. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my gosh, so good. Well, tell me because you're serving so many different clients, like I said, you work with, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, larger organizations. Like, how do you take care of yourself as a business owner? Like, how do you kind of feel your mind, your body, and your soul as a mother, as a wife?
Oh, yeah. Um, yeah, self-care, it can be elusive. I'm learning. I'm also learning. I like to work out also. So I've hired myself a fitness coach. I've also hired myself like a nutrition coach, just so that at least I know what I'm putting in my body is, and because of her, I've discovered I'm apparently gluten intolerant, and so um, I know that my body will also need like massages. That's something I love, like just being able to get a regular
Ditto.
massage, right?
Yes, love.
I have, some non-negotiable dates.
Mhm.
So every weekend in November, I get together with these girlfriends we've known each other for 35 years. And that's our weekend. Like we have a weekend where we pick a date and we just go out. And so I think it was Jesse Itzler who said to plan around, the stuff that's for you, right? That's more of like soul serving. Um, where you put it all down and you say, okay, these are the dates of my vacation, these are the dates for me, these are the dates for this, and then everything else goes around it. It follows your North Star analogy, where it's like, my kids I know have this, and this. Like, I'm not missing 8th grade graduation for sure. So that day's blocked. So some of those things. And then, of course, the stuff for myself. It takes practice.
Yeah.
um, and then reading books, I have an account on Audible as well. So when I'm running and I like to train, I will be training for another half marathon soon. And so, listening to some of these Audible books, I take recommendations everywhere. So if you have some, that's probably my next
I
down.
have tons because I ask every guest. So now, and I'm going to ask you too, like what are you reading right now, or what's a recommendation that you
Yeah.
have for our audience that maybe you've read in the past?
Well, it was related to a little bit of what I was doing for somebody. So I downloaded the book of Patrick Lencioni. I think it's The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. Um, and so that was an easy read slash listen. There's another book my friend gave me over the holidays, which was Tina Fey's Bossy Pants.
Oh yeah,
And so I'm kind of in the middle of it because the reading takes a little bit, when you have kids and all that stuff. What's the other one that I just downloaded? It was the Simon Sinek, The Infinite Game. So I just started that one. So that one I'll wait a little bit to see what my thoughts are around it. But I did just download that.
amazing. Yeah, I love his book, Start with Why.
Yes, yeah.
Such a great book. Love that. And I've recommended it so many times over. I should get like a commission on it, but I
can if you do an Amazon
I
affiliate.
know. Well now I know. But prior when I was reading and just handing out books to people,
Yeah.
like, should have been doing this.
Well,
Um,
David Waldy, he was the one who recommended, I think, the Go Giver to me.
yes,
And that
yes,
was a very, like, I still remember that one. Like,
such a great
yeah,
book.
yeah.
And speaking of books, you have a book.
I've contributed to.
Okay. Well, tell us about that book. It's Your Story Sells.
So Your Story Sells was a compilation of different authors, and I think that's mostly the books that I've done. Some of them were invitations to be like, "Hey, do you want to be a part of this?" And the whole idea is that your story will actually magnetize the people that you want to serve, or that will, resonate with your message. Um, and that's kind of how you build your business.
I love that.
Long and short of it.
I love it. Well, tell us, like, what is the most rewarding part of, kind of building your brand story?
Well, one is of course seeing the way that clients, they're like they have that clarity, like, that moment. Like it's like, oh, this would be great, and seeing that actually lights them up and they get to do it. The other is of course being still able to live my life the way I want it, right? That's the other piece to it where I'm I am working on not compromising, my time, my resources, and all those things for somebody else. And that's probably why entrepreneurs leave corporate too, because you're always, giving your time and your effort to somebody else, what you could be building for yourself. And so it's bringing that together. Like I'm able to have that help and make that impact on somebody's life and still have that impact on my own. And so uh, always a juggle. And so that's a phrase I said I was going to coin and put on a bumper sticker because
You should.
the juggle is real. Is that
It's
what I
so
always?
real. Oh, it is so real. And I love that a lot of times when I ask people this question, they make it about someone else,
Yeah.
something else. And I
Yeah.
love that you include yourself. Like it tells me a lot about like just where you are. Like I love that. And
You.
I think it's so important because a lot of times when we are in a service-oriented role and serving others and we're mothers and all of these things, it's so easy to forget ourselves. And
Right.
so I love that you remember yourself. So
Well,
um
it's a process,
it
right? It's
is.
not like I can't say I did that 2 weeks ago, but it is one of those things. It's like, okay, I know I could have done better.
Mhm.
So what do I do differently? And I mean, it's also what we teach our kids. It's like, great, you made a mistake. So now what could you do to
Yep.
not repeat that? So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I wrote a whole book on that,
Yeah.
for children, uh, helping them understand the power of their choices. And, because it's for little kids, I wouldn't necessarily write this for like, a teenager or an adult because, I'm like, I think all of our choices, like, they're not necessarily bad choices. Like, we can make wrong choices that maybe take us down a path that isn't, like
Yeah.
pointing towards our North Star. But
Right.
at the same time, it's like it's such a learning opportunity, even if they are quote unquote bad, right? And
Right.
so the book I talk about red choices and green choices,
Uh-huh.
and if you
Uh-huh.
make red choice, it's like I like my kids to think, like I'm like, well, now what would have made that a green choice, So I've been teaching them this since they were toddlers, so it was
Yeah.
really cool to share it and put it into a book. so go and coin your phrase. I love that.
Yeah, because I've said it several times, and three different people were like, "That's a good one. I'll use it." I'm like, "Well, remember where you got it."
Yes, exactly. I know. Yeah. Yeah. That's difficult, especially in the social media world where people are stealing content and redoing it as their own and claiming it as their own. But, I always say I leave everything up to God and I just say God saw it, you know.
Yes.
So he knows where the inspiration came from. He knows, and that's really truly where our blessings come from. So
Yes. Amen.
um, yes, thank you. So,
Believe
what's
that.
next for you, Jenny? Like, what do you have anything on the horizon? Like, are you taking new clients more importantly?
Yes, yes, I am
So,
taking, new clients. I've actually what was very new for me in the last, again, an iteration of the business, right? We've been doing branding and marketing that's very external, but lately some of the clients that I've been working with have asked for more internal branding, like with their employees or their teams, and that's kind of been a very interesting development. And just how, what do we want to be known for as a team? How do I want to be known for as a leader? Like just specific to leadership development, which, I mean, if I think about it, it has been something that I've had and I've done. I've just never really put my focus on it up until now, because then somehow, I guess I was open and inspired and it kind of landed in my lap, and I'm like, let's do that. Let's try it out and see. And so that has in fact opened up more of my, the client pool, if you would, because now it's like leaders of teams, whether you're in a big corporation or it's your own entrepreneur, you're building your team around you, then it becomes a little bit more of a micro thing for an organization, not just the external brand that you're presenting outward, but what's happening internally as well. So that's been interesting.
That
Um,
is so cool.
yeah,
That is really cool. And I can see how powerful that can be. Like as a former people leader, like,
uh,
we did some of those things, like, when teams wanted to be called certain things and they wanted to brand themselves, but like we did not have the tools, I'm gonna be honest with you.
yeah,
We were just trialing and erroring it. So I can imagine how powerful that could be to really like kind of anchor the team to something, that like
yeah.
really, then points to the outer North Star, right? Or the company North Star, but really allows them to anchor themselves to something. So love that. So
Yeah,
cool.
that's cool. So if you know anybody, I'm happy to.
Yes, I will keep it in mind. And please, if you're listening, reach out to Jenny. She's thebomb.com. So I just love talking to you. I swear I could talk to you all day because I learn something new
Like,
every time I
that's
talk to you. And it's a great energy exchange. So, but
yeah.
I just want to thank you so much for coming on Sunday Soul Day, blessing us with your wisdom. And honestly, just I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. This is amazing. And I'm glad again we have this connection. I feel like it's such a natural thing for us. So thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you. And everyone, as always, have an amazing Sunday. Do us a quick favor, leave your favorite part of this amazing conversation in the comments below, and we'll see you next Sunday. Bye.